Okay, well, it says we are live. Welcome to our Read for Their Mind, Body, Spirit Facebook Live event. I'm Christopher McClure, and today we have a very special guest, celebrated creator Monica Bodirsky. Monica is most recently the creator of the Shadowland Tarot. We also created a Mind by Spirit bag based on the artwork. And we wanted to catch up today to learn more about this amazing deck, how to use it, and what lies ahead. But first, a little background on Monica. Monica Bodirsky. I keep getting it wrong, don't I? Every time I say it.
Oh, that was good.
That was good. Okay. Place yourself as a settler of European origin living on Turtle Island in Tekaronto, and a first generation Canadian of Northern and Eastern European background with some Romani and Jewish heritage. Her art, writing, and teaching focus on decolonizing internalized thought and towards dismantling any and all systems of oppression. She follows an inherited multi-generational familial path of divination, mediumship, ancestral veneration, herbalism, and animism, which are the keystones of her earth-based spiritual practice. She's a full-time artist and the creator of several oracle decks, including Shadowland Tarot, which I just mentioned, and the book set created as a guide for people to seek healing and empowerment through shadow work. And she's currently working on the fifth edition of the House of Shadows Lenormand, as well as her next tarot deck. Self-awareness, spiritual awakening, and empowerment are her communal objectives. Communal objectives. I love that term, communal objectives. It just brings everything in. It's like a hug almost. Communal objectives. It's really a great way to be. So glad to have you here. How are you? How was your day going? How's everything?
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Chris. I really appreciate that you've given me the opportunity to share a little bit about the Shadowland Tarot and just to chat with you. So far, things are going pretty well here. I'm a little swamped with a festival I'm working on, but for a lot of us, October in the Northern Hemisphere is referred to as the season of the witch, when the veil is a bit thin, and some of us who are in the business of esoteric things get really swamped, but also really energized and super charged with this time of year because it's just our favorite time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of excitement in the air. Everywhere I go, I visit a lot of stores and things, and just there's this palpable excitement, for this month. So many, who are into Mind by Spirit Tarot and Wicca and all those different, all the beauty of all these things that we work with, are just really just they're peak excitement right now. So
Yeah.
actually, yeah, tell me a little bit about Witchfest. I mean, we're going to go off script right away, so that's fine. So Witchfest, what is this that you're doing right now?
It's an arts and culture festival that I founded, and I'm the programmer for. We hold many events, sometimes 12 up to 20 different events, all within October 1st to October 31st. And it's a little bit complex in its origin, just because it came about from a really archaic Canadian law that made witchcraft, or the pretense of witchcraft and fortune telling, illegal. So it came up for a review, mercifully, in 2017, and it's in the process of being stricken off the record as just horribly archaic. And I when I heard about that, I was pretty thrilled, and I thought, maybe it's a good time to start a festival. So with no money and no plan, as it goes, being the creative sort, I just got a few friends and we jumped in with that, and they really came through. We got a lot of community, small retail, and new age shops, and people who are spiritual practitioners to pitch in and volunteer. And they shared so much of their wisdom and their skills. And a lot of us, I find here, are very much creative people. And so there were craft shows, there was the Witches Ball. We just had so many events. And part of my idea here was to unite what I consider to be a bit of a fractured or siloed community, in that a lot of us are solitary practitioners, or so steeped in our tradition that we don't ever look outside of it. So I thought, well, maybe since it's October and the non-witching population also finds it a safe place of contact, because of Halloween. Maybe we could just bring everyone together and share our wisdom and skills to showcase the diversity as well as the inclusivity of our community. So as you can imagine, it keeps me hopping. This is we did that proverbial pivot here and went from being live to online because of the understanding that we could be going into the second wave, which we are in currently. So there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to get online that's very, very different. And that's in between me, of course, making art and doing tarot reading and keeping everything else rolling. But as I said, it's really energizing, and I'm really happy to be doing this, especially this year. Chris, we had a full moon on October 1st.
Oh.
And we're getting a full moon on the 31st.
Wow. Wow.
It's perfect bookends.
No wonder everyone's so excited and keyed up. It's just like, it's a celestial event here, the celestial events.
Absolutely.
Amazing. It's amazing. So now I was reminiscing a little bit, about our first meeting. I think, we met first at the Reader's Studio, which is a conference, the professional tarot readers put on by the Tarot School. And it might have been as long as 5 years ago, I think, which is time. It's just amazing how these, time just wings on by. And we had a table next to each other. I was sharing Red Feather titles, and you had a self-published deck at the time. And it was just that's where it all started. And connecting with people, and I could tell by the way that you interacted with the professionals there, that you yourself you're a professional, not only when your artwork, but just in how you approach the subject matter. And I think it's really and that comes through in everything that you produce. Really, I think it's just that professionalism and the real desire to produce something that's going to change people's lives and make a difference for them. I think that's really, and I think that's why I remember I gave you I got this little letter that I gave to you then. It's like, please think of publishing with us, which you accepted, and here we are, Shadowland Tarot. Now I did have a beautiful handy, so just in case, so everyone can see it. It's everyone I show this to is just astounded by it, and so thank you for bringing it to us. So what now? I feel bad though, even with all that history now. I never really asked you how'd you get into like cartomancy and tarot. What's your tarot story?
Wow. Well, not that I'm going to scream out my number of decades attached to me as far as age. However, many decades ago, it started when I was 10, and I was visiting a friend shortly after Christmas. And we were just chatting, and she just pulled this deck of cards out, and she just literally lobbed them across the room. She was a hilarious friend of mine. We just loved to hang out. Her name was Louise, and she said, "I really don't want these. Do you want them?" In that warm, fuzzy gift exchange kind of a way that some kids.
Very, very warm and fuzzy. Mm-hmm.
And so I picked up the deck, and I said, "Well, sure. What are they?" And she said, "Oh, they're called tarot. I don't really know much about them. I just don't really like them." And I just started to look through them, and because I was one of those kids who started sketching and doodling pretty much before speaking, I was captivated by the artwork and the style of the deck. And as it turns out, it was a really horrid knockoff of a Rider-Waite Smith deck from a certain company I won't mention. I don't think they're in business anymore. It was a really, I think all they did was photocopy or do some bad reprint of the deck. And they translated things horribly. But the imagery and the system itself was really intriguing for me right away. And I remember, because I was, one of those precocious reader types, I went right away to the library, or in our case, a bookmobile, which came into our neighborhood every week.
Yeah, we used to have that.
And and I went in and I just walked out with all the books I could find, a stack. We were allowed 10 every 2 weeks, I think. And I read Arthur E. Waite's book on Rider-Waite Smith and tarot,
Mhm.
and I was just really captivated and started using the cards, started seeing if what they said would come true, pulling single cards, because I wasn't really understanding spreads. And I do apologize in advance to anyone who loves the Celtic Cross, but I found it did not work for me. So I just started pulling cards and seeing what would happen. So that's how I got into it at first.
That's fascinating. Yeah, those kind of those knockoff decks or whatever. I remember one time that I found a tarot deck in a dollar store. It was probably the worst I've ever seen. I have it around here somewhere. But yeah, it's amazing how many are out there too. And I love the story of like it being thrown at you. There's a tradition that you should be gifted your first tarot, isn't that right? I mean, you've heard of that tradition.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure if that was really a gift or not. It was more just to take it, clearing out, like, take this thing. So technically, so
it was an interesting gift, and perhaps foretold of a lot of things that have come my way. So
right there, foreshadowing, perhaps. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, exactly. Before you even open the deck, he was foreshadowing, isn't it?
Exactly.
Right there, you go. Shadowland here. I know the shadow. Whoops. So yeah, um, if you share that with me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've been reading tarot, I would say seriously, for over 40 years now. I mean, I'm not counting, those times as a kid just exploring. But in that time, because simultaneously I've had an arts practice, I started to use tarot. Well, like a lot of people, I collect way too many decks. All right. I've had to share, trade like a lot of people. But I use decks, about 5 or 6 favorite decks for my own shadow work. And I just wanted imagery that was neither extremely dark and gothic, although I love the art. But for shadow work, it just, in some of those sensitive areas, it was a bit overwhelming for me. I may have unpacked a little too much. And yet there are some very lighthearted tarot decks that just aren't conducive either. At least they weren't for me for shadow work or going into the shadows. So I just thought maybe if I created some kind of a space where it was non-threatening, as in Shadowland, and you could meet some of the characters, and I would create those characters who could walk us through a journey. And there are people tell me there's still this kind of an underlying spooky tone to things I do,
Mhm.
despite my sense of humor. It's very reflective of how I am. I can be very, very dark and yet laugh all the way through it, if you know what I'm saying. So
No, I get
that was it, because I thought, well, this could help people who seem to agree with me that it's difficult to find something in between that space of either too dark or too whimsical. And they wanted to do. I had a lot of clients asking how to conduct shadow work.
it.
And so I just wanted to help create a tool to empower people to conduct their own shadow work, and help with that. As a designer and an artist, I think it's really important to get the right tools into the right hands. And when people are asking for that, I could not say no.
No, I totally understand. So it sounds to me as though that working through this deck, you were doing shadow work as you're going for yourself. That's it. So, boy, that's a lot. That takes a lot, sort of a deal of bravery to do, I guess, really, because you're painting your own shadow work a little bit. I'm feeling that you were, at least, you were illustrating it. And so there's some of you, of course, in this, and that your own. So anyway, so I think it's very brave to admit that, and that through that process too. And I think that's one way, again, why this is connected with so many and so powerful, because it's a good middle point, really. So it's not so dark that it takes you into a place that is truly uncomfortable, but it's not just lighthearted kind of fairyish or things, something like that, or trying to. So it allows, as you're saying, for a kind of a safe space to enter this Shadowland and into this world and deal with important things. And shadow work is talked about, but I have yet to see really outside of this really good methods to dive deeply into that. And I think it's a great union of a very important spiritual mark that everyone should address. Really, go through that work so they know themselves better and can work through what they need to progress to the next level. So that's really that really speaks very very plainly through this. So what did you really enjoy the most creating the deck?
Well, the journey itself, I've also shared a fair bit of creative experience, especially teaching sessionally at OCAD University, which is an art and design university. So I was speaking a lot about the process. So engaging in the process myself was really wonderful. And I think a lot of what I found was really interesting. You're right in that I was living through a fair bit of it. I had to, part of the inspiration for even getting into shadow work to begin with was because I was a caregiver for many years for family members who have since passed. And in working through that grief, I think a lot of us accumulate shadows that we're totally unaware of, or it's also a time that since you're healing from that grief to go there. So I thought, I will do that in process as well. I think the most enjoyable part was living the cards. I've heard that before. I will say the Tower week was a bit bumpy, but you can unpack quite a bit. But I think the whole process was enjoyable, right from the idea and writing about it. I love writing and planning. I love doing that too, doing the outlines and getting everything ready, getting all the tools I need, doing the rough sketches, right through to refining those and dreaming about them and having it integrated in my life. Using what I consider to be very sacred water for the color, watercolor paints, which is a charged moon water. I use earth-based pigments that I feel have a very strong connection to the art as well. I have a little essential oil in my ink to give that a little charge. So the space is very sacred in creating as well. And it's broken into those stages. So the whole thing is really enjoyable. The wrap up, I'm not even, I don't mind editing. I hope I didn't drive anyone too crazy in that process.
If you did, they didn't share that with me.
But I actually, right from beginning to end, and I'm enjoying sharing it now as a finished product. So, it just suited to me being a graphic designer as well as a small business person, creative artist, fine artist, and spiritual. All of those elements have come together in such a way that it is, even under duress or deadline or bad days or whatever we all go through when we create, there's still such joy in it because it's everything I love to do, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. That's great. So yeah, I love hearing about your creative process and the intention that you put into these every aspect of this and everything that you do. And that, again, speaks back to how I felt when I first met you, and that just comes through in everything you're doing, and even your personality as well. So now, as far as tarot is concerned, do you read tarot often for yourself or others, or what's your
yeah, I do, depending on my schedule. But on my website, people do book consultations. And clearly they're virtual right now, which is good. It's opened up to a lot of international clientele. I was doing that before, but I think it's just a better atmosphere and kind of enforced anyway. But I do get a lot of requests for reading, and I love doing that. Using the Shadowland Tarot has been interesting because it's given me an extra layer, and I always joke with people, and I know the artist, so it's a little easier to read. That's been really great. And do I read for myself fairly often? Or how often? Mm, I do. But my cards give me back talk. So yeah, and I've had that, from people. They're telling me, they go, Monica, your cards are giving me sass. And I go, oh yeah. Ha. Well, they give me sass too, because, I can be, despite all of my joking, as a lot of people will attest, I am very straightforward, because I find, kind of this weird read between the lines for everything leaves so much room for miscommunication. So yeah, I will pull a card when I'm not clear on something, and it is pretty straightforward to me what I'm being told. I cannot bypass that. And I go, dang, okay, I'm giving myself my own medicine. All right.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been reading into tarot for a long time myself, and prior to Red Feather 2, and different forms of divination. And the interesting thing that I found too, you mentioned like humor, in that there is sometimes like real humor to these to readings and what comes out. I'm going to scroll for a moment here, but going into different forms of divination. When I first started doing like I Ching, I was astounded by some of the questions, some of the answers I would get back, and how full of down to earth humor they were. They don't I can describe it. So all these different forms of divination is really fascinating to see the continuity between different forms. All speaking to a similar thing too. Which is advice for the correct path and what healing that you need. So so it's funny. So we talk a lot about journeys and things. So how do you think that over time the like mind, body, spirit in general has shifted over the time that you've been doing it? I think it's kind of like really shifted a good deal. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I would agree with you, Chris. You were talking a little bit about how we met, and years ago that wouldn't have happened, where there were spaces for people to gather and meet. And I was, really captivated by the fact that you were calling yourself, I hope I get this right, titles evangelist, I believe.
At the time, yes, that was my yes.
I went, are you kidding? This is, and for acquisitions, you're doing outreach. Previously there was no outreach. You felt very off-put by even attempting to talk to somebody about getting published. And it's just so much more accessible in general. You were very, very kind to have a discussion. And I looked at the goods on the table for Red Feather, and I was astounded at the quality of packaging. I mean, mind you, I know I did frame this from like 100 years ago with a knockoff deck, but in the last 10 years, 15 years even, the quality of the packaging and the books and the writing, to me, just because so many people are getting involved and it is accessible, is just gone through the roof. I think there are fairs, festivals, people are talking about these things more. I know from my own clientele, they're from a wide variety of religious backgrounds that don't seem to have conflicts anymore with tarot, and are no longer necessarily referring to it as the devil's book or whatever. It's just a much more open and welcoming space, and it's also turned a lot to self-care. While it is still really steeped in the history of occult practices, there's this addition, which I don't think is watering down or a bad thing. It is inclusivity to have people who are doing psychological practices use them as prompts, and for self-care and healing in general to pull in tarot cards to start conversations for self-awareness. So it's just expanded incredibly. And I'm just really happy to see that, because there should be. The more voices are involved, the more we all learn, we all share, and we all grow together. So I think it's wonderful.
Hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the acceptance has really grown over time. Even for when I first started getting into it, there was like a this small used bookstore had this little section and of maybe some tarot and metaphysical books, and now you have shops that are dedicated just to that, and it's growing all the time. And not only that, into just your traditional bookstores, too, your independent bookstores, and your larger chain bookstores as well, which is just amazing to see. And also, it's culturally and cross generational as well. It's great to see that every successive generation now is seems to be approaching mind body spirit with more and more gusto, more it's people are just getting excited about um, the they're getting excited about their journeys, and I think that's important. No matter what path that you come through, what tradition you come through, is just being um, connected to to your path and working your path. And I think that's the great thing. One of the great things about Shadowland Tarot is like it's an essential tool to help someone on their journey, and that's what we're trying to produce with Red Feather in general as well as those important tools, and not just in and so it's going worldwide, it's going multi-generational, and so forth. And you strike me as someone who's really trying to foster foster that community, foster successive generations coming up through, and really helping them to find their own way through what you're creating. Am I getting that right?
Well, if you're seeing that, I'm happy, because
I see that. Okay, all right. Not
that is in my heart for sure. And I am trying to project that, because I think it's just really important. I think to have all the voices in here, and I'm very aware of that. People have come from different cultural backgrounds and ages and abilities and have different lifestyles. And I think that we should all be thinking about that and understand that those things are not a cause for division, but they are there to be celebrated, and they make our communities rich. And why wouldn't we want to include everybody and celebrate diversity, instead of sometimes there's this kind of great leveling of, oh well, we're all the same. Well, we are, but let's be honest, we're all quite different too, and it's nothing to be afraid of. We are different. Why don't we just say, hey, this is how I look at it. This is how I look at it. Let's go grab coffee. And hopefully that is what's coming through with the Shadowland Tarot and other decks that I've been working on. People will pick that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they are, and more are all the time. Now, I have to ask you, who is that behind over your shoulder there? I keep getting drawn to
this is my muse, Cindy.
Oh, your muse. Okay.
Cindy's my muse. Cindy's got I don't want to take up too much time, but I can share where Cindy came from, if that's okay.
Sure. It's fascinating. She just kind of she's begging to be I think.
Well, okay. Here's the story of Cindy. I have a family dentist that we've been going to for a very long time, and he's a friend, and he knew, he knows that I'm an artist, and I did a lot of shadow boxes, again with the shadows, right? They were from found objects and different pieces of what people normally discard. So I was making these psychological shadow boxes to bring across some abstract notions. And he said, you know what, Monica, I found something I think you'd like for your art. I thought he was going to, give me something about this big, because my shadow boxes are not huge. They're like 8 by 10, generally in that range. And when I got there for the appointment, he came out with Cindy, who was not clothed, had a giant hole in her head. Sorry for sharing this, Sin, but she has no arms. And so she was in really rough shape. And he
Hmm.
said, she was at the side of the road. She's probably from the 60s or 70s. And,
Hmm.
I just thought maybe you could make some phenomenal art out of her. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, well, gosh, people bring me the darndest things over the years. I will certainly, bring Cindy home. And immediately, because I come from a family of animists, we talk to everything, right? It's all alive. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's a poor young girl. She's probably about 10 to 12 years old. She was a window dressing dummy, sorry to
I
use the
see.
term, or mannequin, and from a large department store. So I brought her home and I was just thinking of art. And all of a sudden I thought, you know what? I feel compelled to heal poor Cindy here. So I actually put some herbs and some healing balm into her head. I
Hmm.
fixed the hole in her head. And then
Hmm.
before I knew it, I was throwing clothes on her and talking to her. And yes, I know, some of your audience is going to say, oh my God, the poor woman. She's been locked up too long. First of all, this was years ago. And
Yeah.
and secondly, this is how creative people who are into spirituality work sometimes. And if you're an animist, there just seemed to be a spirit attached. And I thought, you know what? Then I'm just going to run with that. And I sent my friend Sean the picture of her, and he went, "Oh, you decided to heal this mannequin instead of using her for art." And I said, "Well, yeah, it's reciprocity here. She's
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
muse and helping me with my creative work." So, and she just wanted to be part of this interview today. So I said, "Oh, sure, why not jump in, Cindy?"
Right, and there she is. So that's what I was feeling, that she wanted to be addressed. So hello, Cindy, and thank you for being here as well, yeah. And for being such a wonderful muse for Monica. So that said, has Cindy inspired you for anything else? What's lying ahead for for you? Okay.
Oh, definitely.
Mhm.
Well, apart from creating logos, which I do also for Witch Fest and for people, I do some commissioned artwork. I'm also illustrating an upcoming edition. The House of Shadows, Lenormand has gone through 4 editions already, and they are limited editions, not like I'm selling thousands. I don't mean to imply that, but they're already sold out from their 4th edition. And I'm working on the 5th edition with 6 new cards. And and by the way, after that, there's this really, really exciting and very special edition coming up, and I'm really thrilled with it because you were inviting me to have a color version of this, something that I've always wanted to do. I just kept repeating the black and white because it was in demand. But to be given the opportunity, I have to thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this color version of the House of Shadows. I think it doesn't take away from any of its intrinsic underlying spooky factor, being a little bit like Wednesday Addams. My drawings tend to look that way as well. But the color is also kind of, in a purpley orangey realm of twilight. And I just really had a great time creating. And I want to tell you that I recreated a lot of the artwork, even though the imagery is the same. I drew it over again because this presented an opportunity in a few cards to refine a little bit or to add a detail. In essence, they look very similar, but it's a whole new vibe for this deck. So thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to that.
Hmm. There will be more on that next year. But yeah, I'm so excited about that, as well. That's going to be awesome. And as you're talking there, you mentioned Wednesday Adams, and of course, you had the Adams Family vibe. I've always felt that too. I was a huge fan of Charles Adams and all of that too. I can almost see like Shadowland being its own, series or something. There's something there. So there's something other there that I'm seeing. At least maybe like storybooks or something. I don't know. So I'm gonna throw that out there. Maybe you thought of it already, but just to put it out into the universe and see what happens. But I think that, but yeah, the land you're creating, this land, is it's important, and I think it's just there are other ways to connect it. So I'll leave it there.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I would love to. Because I enjoyed animation so very much, and I did work very briefly for a gentleman who was doing animation. And I guess part of me looking at my own imagery, I could very easily see them walking across the screen and definitely journey in my own mind to them as living beings who do move around and who are functioning. They're not static. So I would love to see that actually animated. And I want to give a shout out to Brenda at Red Feather for creating the little animation of the spider moving up and down in the book. She so hit it with the way I see things. So when you flip through the book that comes with the Shadowland Tarot, to see that little spider moving up and down was just like, I can't believe it. I was so thrilled with that.
Yeah, I love those little touches too. Let me see if I can. Oh yeah, so if I can. So we have a little spider.
Yeah.
Right here, this little guy here, and then he just moves up and down. If I could do a quick.
Yeah.
Oh,
there he is, dropping down on his little spider web. Yeah.
Great. It's such a blast. I don't know. I love that too. There's little things like that are just really, and it's not this kind of thing that you would like maybe see right away either. You just like you're going through and this is this neat meaning, this is this meaning, but then as you go through, it's like, wait a second.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the video too. I love the video that she created as well.
So, the video is wonderful.
I know. It's a lot of fun. So how can people reach out to you? How can people connect with you? Are you on social media and are you out doing that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm doing YouTube videos in Shadowland. So it's called Shadowland, but if you go to YouTube and look for Monica Bodirsky, as long as you can spell it correctly, you will find me. There have been a lot of unboxings and reviews of the deck, so I'm so thrilled. So if you want to get hold of me, I always have links in my YouTube videos. I also have my website, of course, which is monicabodirsky.com. There's a fair bit of information there, and my emails there. I'm easy to get hold of. I'm on Facebook with a Shadowland group to discuss the cards, and also my own design page there. And also on Instagram, Monica Bodirsky. Again, most of this is in my name. So like I said, as long as you spell it correctly, you should be able to find me. And I'm pretty easy to get hold of. I've managed to answer every single inquiry I've had. And there were quite a few, let me tell you.
Wow.
But I really love hearing from people, getting their input. People have told me everything from accessibility concerns to where to go to get them in their store or their shop, how to find them internationally. Mm-hmm. So I've just been really happy to hear from everybody about their experiences as well. I've gotten wonderful stories about spiders and about what some of the images have brought forward for people. Apart from just them doing shadow work in what they consider a safe space. People have told me they like to use it as a regular tarot deck. Other people have said they love to use it just for shadow work or in combination with other systems, which I think is also wonderful. I do that all the time. Mm-hmm. So you can get hold of me in any of those spaces. I'm not hard to find.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's great to see everything you're doing there. We did have something pop up here from Peter Coe. He says, enjoying your discussion today. Hope we can get together at Readers. Hey, Bo. So,
hey, Coe.
Okay. I wasn't sure that's your lingo. That's really cool.
Sure, it is that. And normally we have Arwen Lynch Poe, so it's usually Poe, Coe, and Bo, but hey.
Poe, Coe, and Bo. That's great. That's really cool. So that's what we have here right now. So well, I tell you what, we're gonna probably just give it a wrap up here. So thank you so much, Monica. Thanks to everyone who tuned in to our live event. It was so much fun. being able to talk with you and meeting Cindy too. That was great. The Shadowland Tarot and the bag too are available on redfeathermbs.com and wherever Mind by Spirit items are sold. So many thanks to you all, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.